Boom. Ladies and gentlemen, we are live. That's right. We are live again on a Saturday afternoon. We are the Wrasslin for Life Network, and we are bringing you a very special edition of the Let's Rumble podcast. Why is it special? Well, it's because of that lovely lady right there. She is joining us for a wonderful interview. We are going to dive in live, unscripted, uncensored. We're going to talk a whole lot of wrestling for a little while, folks. Do not go anywhere. It's going to be a fun one. Let's go. Ding, ding, ding. We are live, folks. Like I said, we are always live, the channel that just grinds on at different levels back at it. As I said, we are the Wrasslin for Life Network. And as always, I am Mr. Every Night, KJ White, the Iron Man of YouTube, the man that just won't go home. But let's be real. Nobody wants to see me today. We have other things to talk about. And I am joined by a very special guest today. And you may have seen her on Fightful.com, co-hosting with Sean Ross Sapp. You may have seen her on Pro Wrestling Action doing interviews in Florida. You may have seen her become the 2022 Miss Berkshire County USA. You may have seen her in a lot of places, folks. She can dance. She can sing. She's talented. She is the wrestling aficionado, Miss Julie Cutler. How are you, ma'am?
Thank you so much for quite the introduction. Oh my goodness, I'm so flattered. And thank you so much.
Absolutely.
Thank you so much again for having me. I know we've already profusely thanked each other back and forth, but I was really excited to do this because I feel like I've done a lot of podcasting thus far that's really been centered around reviewing wrestling shows, and it's kind of
Yes.
nice to just get on here and be able to talk wrestling past, wrestling history, be able to talk a little bit about myself. So I'm really excited.
Absolutely. And for those who haven't seen you, on Fightful.com and give those reviews, go check it out. Go over there, see Julie do her thing. And it's excellent. But yes, I always want to bring on guests and talk about, the true love. I mean, this is a channel for fans by fans. So it's a great pleasure to have you here. And like you said, the mutual gratitude has been outstanding. But that being said, let's get into the beginning of all this.
Okay.
Where did your love for wrestling come from, and where did it all begin?
So I fell in love with wrestling when I was very, very young. Basically, I think I was about 6 or 7 years old. It was basically the age that I needed to be in order to loosely understand what was going on in wrestling.
Okay.
But what happened was one of my older brothers, he's 4 years older than me, and one of our close family friends that we grew up with, who's basically like a brother to me.
Okay.
I've known him my entire life. They, being a little bit older than me, they were getting into wrestling together. And I remember, being the younger sibling, I have 2 older brothers, being the younger sibling, being the little girl, I kind of followed suit with a lot of things that my brothers liked and did. I kind of, I looked up to them and I wanted to be able to play with them and do a lot of the things that they did. And so I remember it was like a Saturday I was playing in my family room. And I remember my older brother was watching wrestling on TV. And I don't know if it was live, if it was something that we had taped on VHS, back in the day when that was a thing.
I like it.
But I remember watching wrestling on a Saturday afternoon. I don't know the exact match, but I do remember that the Dudley Boys were wrestling on TV. And I just kind of started watching along with my older brother. And then he would start getting the video games and the action figures and things like that, and I kind of started doing it along with him.
Okay.
I actually remember when the first SmackDown games came out for PlayStation, PlayStation 2. I remember PlayStation 2 was brand new.
Absolutely.
Yeah, I think I just came out around the time when I was really young, and I remember playing SmackDown 2 on PlayStation, and like you couldn't save your data unless you had a memory card
Yep.
for your PlayStation, which we didn't have one for a while. I think we got one eventually, but like
Just leave it on.
yeah, I remember leaving our PlayStation on for like a week because we had like all of these
Mhm.
storylines and things that we had built up. And I remember buying the action figures. I had Stephanie McMahon action figure. I had
Yeah.
Lita. Like I thought that that was the coolest thing when I was able to find the women and like people that I felt like I related to on
Yeah.
some level. So I kind of fell in love with it when I was very young. And then I think there was like a period in time, I want to say maybe like mid 2000s, when I feel like there were a lot of people that sort of fell off the wrestling
Yep.
bandwagon a little bit. Like it was kind of when like the main event scene wasn't as
Yeah.
buff. Like I feel like there weren't as many like big main event names.
Yep.
And so like I fell off the wagon a little bit around that time myself. But then as I got older again, I remember like when I was in college and I graduated and I started working and I had like my own disposable income, that was kind of when I was like, oh, well, like now I can do whatever I want. I can travel, I can go to all these events. And so that's
Yeah.
kind of what I started doing. I remember like I went to my first WrestleMania, which was WrestleMania 33 in Orlando at the
Okay.
Camping World Stadium.
Absolutely.
And I went to WrestleMania, the following year, and I started going to a lot of live events and started going to a lot of local wrestling promotions. Up where I live, Northeast Wrestling is a pretty big one. Um,
Mhm.
and so, like, once I kind of was able to call the shots myself, I started going to as many things as I could.
Okay.
And then I realized as I was going to events, it was like, I wanted to sit closer and closer. Like I wanted to sit in the front row. I wanted to feel like I was part of the action. And then once you sit in the front row, it's hard to go back to sitting somewhere else.
Right.
You get
Right.
used to
Once you
that.
set
And
that
so,
that level.
yeah. And so I remember like, I always wanted to sit, right up close to the action. And then I kind of felt like I was like, this isn't good enough. I was like, I have to be in it. I have to be in it somehow. It just got to the point. It was like, first, I have to go, I have to be there, I have to be as close as possible. And then it was like, I can't just be a fan. Like, I can't just be on the other side of the barricade. I was like, I need to feel like I'm a part of this somehow.
Absolutely.
Um, and so it's just kind of, it started when I was a little girl and it just kind of got more and more out of control as
Out
I
of
got
control.
older.
Yeah, and I think a lot of wrestling fans have that, like, I gave up on wrestling for a while, but then I came back, and you always find a reason, but now you get the bug, you wanna be closer and closer, and just sitting front row is not good enough.
That's
How
the
did that
thing.
transition begin to evolve, though? How did you begin to work your way into being involved with wrestling?
Honestly, it sort of fell into my lap a little bit on accident at first. So what happened, let's see, back in 2021, I was asked to do a podcast. There are two guys that I became friends with, Justin and Dylan. And we had gone to a lot of a lot of the same local wrestling events. And we had kind of connected on social media. And so Justin, he runs a group on Facebook called Nerds of Wrestling, and I believe they have an Instagram page as well. But he kind of runs this like little wrestling community, and he had done a podcast previously that was very much centered on like up and coming independent stars in wrestling. And he wanted to start something new, like a new podcast called Nerds of Wrestling that I think
Okay.
was a little bit more focused towards like behind the scenes. And so he asked me if I wanted to be the first guest. And at the time, like I'd never done anything like that before, but I was just kind of like, oh, okay, like
Yeah.
sure, why not? Seems like it could be fun. It was pretty low pressure. It was just a new podcast. I didn't really know how many people were going to be watching. If it was, I figured they had some following from the little community that they had built, but it just felt like kind of a low pressure sort of a thing. So I was like, okay, well, sure, why not? So we did it, and I realized once we did it that I actually kind of had fun doing it. It was kind of fun to just be able to get online and talk wrestling. And
Absolutely.
I feel like there's also sort of a smaller community of women in wrestling. So I felt like I was sort of able to speak to like a
Mhm.
different perspective a little bit more.
Absolutely.
And then I ended up taking that video and I kind of shared it with some other friends, connections that I had that sort of do the same sort of thing. Like I had become friendly with Sean Ross Sapp a number of years ago, maybe back in like
Okay.
2019 or something like that, I want to say.
Cool,
And
cool.
so I remember like I sent it to him and I sent it to, I don't know if you're familiar with Nico Extra, but
Okay.
he
Yep.
has very popular
Yep.
Instagram, TikTok, YouTube channel as well. And so I sent it to the two of them, and I was kind of like, oh, like I'm brand new at this. I just did this for the first time. If you guys want to watch, feel free. If you want to give me any feedback, like it'd be much appreciated, sort of a thing. And so I think that was part of what really helped me, honestly, was just like don't be afraid to like toot your own horn a little
Yep.
bit, or
Absolutely.
just to reach. Don't be afraid to reach out to people that don't be afraid to reach out to connections that you have and people that you know. So I shared it with the two of them and they were kind of like, oh, okay, like we'll have to have you
Hmm.
on one of our shows at some point. And so I did a couple of Nico's shows last winter, which was a lot of fun. He has such a cool team of people, and they have a really good time on their show. So we would
As they
just get,
should.
yeah. So we would just get on. We'd talk about like the old NXT and AEW because it was when they used to both be on Wednesday night.
Yes.
I remember I'd done that a couple of times, and then I did that and I continued to share, what I was doing with people on social media and whatnot. And so I had ended up doing a prediction show with Sean for Fightful for
Yes.
WrestleMania Backlash.
Yes.
And that was kind of like like a low pressure sort of a thing because it was just a prediction show. It's very
Yep.
opinion based. I think that is kind of a good way of just like seeing, sort of like screen testing someone, seeing how
Yep.
they're going to be on air. And so we did that. And then immediately after we did that, I felt like that went really well. He invited me to come back for one of the AEW pay-per-view post shows. And
Yes.
then that's kind of when things started, I think, taking off a little bit more because the first post show that I did was for Double or Nothing. And that was
Ooh.
the show where there was all of this chaos going on behind the scenes with like
Yep.
MJF having this plane ticket. People
Yep.
weren't sure if he was going to be at the event or not.
Yep.
And so I think a lot more people were tuned in than usual because there was so much going on behind the scenes that people wanted to know what the backstory was to what was really going on. And
Yes.
so we got a really great viewership. I remember we stayed up pretty late doing that podcast. We stayed up pretty late doing all of the post shows just because the pay-per-view ends at like midnight. And
Yep.
then by the time we get on
We
and we
know.
talk about everything, it's like 2:30 in the morning. And so
Mhm.
I remember waking up the next day and going on YouTube like late in the morning. And I think it already had like 45,000 views within like a day or two. So I was like, oh, if I knew that people would listen to me talk about wrestling for 2.5 hours, I would have done this a long time ago.
What have I been waiting for?
Yeah, and it was just overall it was a really positive experience with like the positive feedback that we received from doing that show. And then kind of from there on out, we just started doing all of the AEW post shows together.
Yep.
But it was really nice because obviously, like with people commenting on the internet, you kind of want to take some of it with a grain of salt just because people can be very, critical. You could get really in your head if you start
Oh, huh?
reading comments and start. I mean, I'm a perfectionist enough already. Like I critique myself enough already where like I don't need to, lean into too heavily to additional commentary about
Yeah.
that online. But It seems like generally speaking, most of the feedback that we got was actually very positive, and so that
Absolutely.
was a really cool feeling, and just sort of developing a space in the wrestling community, and then finally getting the opportunity to do live shows when I traveled back. Traveled down to Florida just back in
Yeah.
December, which was also really nice because I do have, friends in wrestling down there. I have family down there, so it's a really good opportunity anytime I get to go down to Florida. And I did backstage interviewing for Pro Wrestling Action
Yes.
with a lot of really awesome up and coming talent. I feel like that was kind of my first taste into doing live shows.
Yes.
And now that I've done that, now I'm like, okay, 2023 is going to be the year
I like it.
where we do a lot more of that. So I think that this whole journey so far has kind of been like a weird snowballing of events.
Yeah.
But I think the key for me has been like, don't be afraid to reach out to people and put yourself over a little bit. And don't be afraid to seek out opportunities, and capitalize on what you've already done,
Really.
sharing what you've already done for different podcasts, different live shows, really like putting yourself out there and inundating the world with who you are. I think those have been key in sort of helping me so far. And I'm just getting started. So I'm very, very early on in this
Yeah.
process, but
Hey,
it's been good so far.
we can definitely relate here on this channel. The same idea. Like we're just getting started. We're just scraping the surface, a few months old or a handful of months old at this point. But no, same idea. And I mean, it's a crazy journey. And it like for yourself, it must be extremely surreal. Like you said, you get off and then you look back and you're like, whoa, 45,000 people. Like, it's crazy.
Yeah, I mean, like I said, I was like, if I knew that I could just sit in my bedroom or in my basement and talk about wrestling for a couple hours and that like people would actually care, I would have
Right?
done this a long time ago. But it's been really cool also just like building a sense of community
Yep.
off of that. Like when I went down to Florida last month, there were so many people. I knew some people going into the show already, but there were so many people that like I had followed on social media for a while, and I knew who they were, and
Yep.
I had done my research on them for that show specifically. But even aside from that, like I already knew a little bit about them and their character and like where they had wrestled before.
Mhm.
So it was really cool just being able to like meet some of these people in person and make so many new friendships. And everybody that I met was very, very nice. Everyone was so friendly and welcoming, and it was very much like an atmosphere of people wanting to work together and
Yep.
help each other, which was so cool. And like we all went out to dinner after the show, and um even with like the podcasting, I feel like there's certain people that tune into the podcasts that I do regularly, and we've kind of been able to like forge friendships that
Yeah.
way and create a little sense of community just amongst like people that tune into Fightful regularly. I know
Mhm.
I actually like to watch on Tuesday nights. Fightful does a post show for NXT with Alex Pulowski and Kate Hensler,
Yep.
and I watch them every week because they're so hilarious. Like I
Yeah.
just think that their commentary on the show is so funny, and so it's like even if I don't watch NXT, I like to watch what they have to say about it just because it's so entertaining, and they always do like funny impressions and things like that. And
Yep.
I feel like there's a little community of people that always tune in on
Mhm.
Tuesday nights, and like we're all going back and forth in the chat. And so it's kind of fun because it's like you really do make real friendships that
Yeah.
way. And so I think just building community and meeting new people has been like one of the coolest things for me, aside from just like being able to do interviews and actually get in the ring
Yeah.
and do interview. Like that was such a cool moment for me, and I can't wait to do more of that. But it really just like the real people connections,
Yep.
that's my favorite part of the whole experience.
Absolutely. I think that's one of the most amazing things. I know some people at times are, oh, it's just silly wrestling, but there really is a community. And I know people get caught up on the negativity of out there, but there really is a nice community, a family that you can build. And, you all share one common interest. Doesn't matter where you're from or how old you are, you have something in common. And it works really well when people are positive and have a right attitude. With that being said, I do want to circle back a little. You talked about getting in the ring. You talked about those interviews, going down to Pro Wrestling Action. What was
Yes.
that first experience like? How were the butterflies? How did you cope? What was it all like?
I mean, I think it's natural for
Yeah,
anybody in any sort of performance environment to be a little bit nervous. I was definitely a little bit nervous because it was
absolutely.
like a new take on something that I love. I did try to really research everybody well before I went into it. Like the promoter, Dan Matt Shaw, and
Yeah,
I had talked on the phone for a couple of hours before I even flew down. I have a notebook where I took notes on all of the matches, like everybody's win loss records, what happened on the previous PWA shows leading up to that show that sort of set up the story. So, like, even if I knew a little bit about people, the performers in general, like, a lot of these people have wrestled for CCW, they've wrestled in AEW Dark, they've wrestled a lot of different places. I kind of focused on learning more of their background within this specific promotion so
yep,
that when I went into the interviews, I had a good idea of like what sort of questions to ask to sort of like lead them to the promo that they wanted to cut.
yep.
And I told a lot of them too when I was there, like I kind of said, I'm here to make you look good. If there's anything in particular that you really want to get across in this interview, let me know and I'll try to tailor what I ask and how I react
Amazing.
to like what you want to get across. And
Mhm.
so I think all in all for a first experience, like I mean I'm like I said, very much a perfectionist and I've always been that way. Like I've
Yep.
always been like the high achieving, like
Mhm.
um my brother always mentions this one time when I was in school and I got a B plus and I had like a week long emotional meltdown. Like I've always been that kind of a person.
Yep.
So I'm always, watching myself back and saying like, what could I do better next time in terms of how I word questions or my body language or my facials or things like that. But I felt like for a first experience, like I was really happy with how things went. I was so happy just with like all the friendships that I made, like I had mentioned. And we did have a little spot after one of the matches. It was, I don't know if you're familiar with Vicky, the Captain Dreamboat.
Yes, I love that name, by the way.
Yeah,
Kudos to her on that
she's
one.
been on AEW Dark a few
Yep.
times and she's trained with QT Marshall. She has a
Hmm.
great look and she's like the perfect quintessential baby face.
Hmm.
And she had a match. She was like the performer in the match that had competed with PWA before. She had a match against Lexi Gomez, the
Yes.
unbreakable Lexi
Okay.
Gomez,
Uh-huh.
which she won. And so after the match, there was a spot where I got in the ring to interview her and just kind of ask, like, Vicky, you've been a fan favorite here at PWA. You've become so beloved by this audience these past several months. What does this victory mean to you? And as that happened, Shalance Royale, who
Shalonce.
has also previously competed with PWA, and she's
Yep.
actually the current OVW Women's Champion. She's been on AEW Dark a number of times as well, and has really
Mhm.
gotten over there. She got in the ring to celebrate
Yeah, did she
with.
sing?
She did. She actually did the national anthem at the beginning of the show, and then what happened was she got in the ring to celebrate with Vicky the Dreamboat, and then she actually turned on her. That
Oh,
was like
wow.
the first big heel turn that has happened since PWA has existed. And so they actually have a match on, I believe it is January 29th. They
Yeah.
have an upcoming show called Riddle Me This, which is also going to
Yes.
be at the Eastmont Civic Center in Altamont Springs, Florida. But I was in the ring when that happened. And so as soon as, they're celebrating together, all of a sudden Shalance turns around and clotheslines her. And so I'm like, bye everyone. I'm getting out of here.
Right? Well, the Tony Schiavone and just, take that exit out.
Yeah, that was my big exit, my
Mhm.
French exit, was, as Maurice would call it, just kind of skedaddle without
Yeah,
saying anything to anybody. So
absolutely.
it was a really cool experience, and it was again just a great learning experience because I have the videos that we took from that show. We did some interviews before the show, and then we did as many as we could, like as people were coming backstage. I tried to grab as many people as possible and just pull them off to the side and get their post-match
Mhm.
reactions. But it was good to be able to watch myself back and,
Yeah.
like I said, nitpick and say, what can I do differently next time? What do I want to incorporate next time?
Mhm.
Um, that's really so helpful. And like I said, it can be kind of a double-edged sword when you're such a perfectionist like I am. I feel
Mhm.
like I've thrown that word out a couple of times, but I've always been very like
Mhm.
detail oriented.
Yeah.
And so sometimes it's tricky because I'm like, I'll be nitpicking something and someone else is like, Julie, that was fine. but I feel like that's also like that's how we get better. So it's good to have those video references.
Absolutely. And I mean, if you listen, I'm the type of person that gets upset when there's a typo, as we've talked about this week. So,
Yeah.
you're like, what did I do? It's ruined. Everyone hates me. But no, that's definitely the challenging part is taking it in stride and not, you know, coming down on yourself in a way that you can it's constructive and you can continue to move forward.
Exactly.
Just curious, who do you remember your first interview? Like who it was?
I think it was Alexi Suplexi,
Okay.
who he is actually, I don't know if you follow him on Instagram at all. He is married to Vicky the Captain
There you
Dreamboat
go.
in real life. And he has like a very thick Russian accent when he speaks and when he interviews.
Yeah.
So he was really fun. I remember we did the first, I don't think we posted this one because I think there was an issue with the video. We tried to do it as like an Instagram live, and then like I couldn't get it to save. It was this whole
Okay.
trying to trying to figure out technology. But
Right.
we just kind of like cut that interview on the spot, and I feel like that was when I was kind of like, okay, Julie, like you know what to do. You know what you want to tweak. You know what you want to fix moving forward. Like that was your first dry run. He did amazing. Because he was his character kind of just like speaks for itself, and the accent and everything, and like the pronunciation of certain words, where like he really leans into like the thick
Yeah.
Russian accent, even when like you might not expect him to. It's kind of, it adds like a layer of humor. But we kind of just like did one on the fly right out of the gate. And then I was like, okay, Julie, like, you know what you want to fix moving forward. You got the initial butterflies out. Let's do this.
Yeah, and then the rest is history to this
And then
point.
the rest was history.
That's
And I do feel like, I don't know, I have yet to find out, like, as I do more shows in the future, like, I feel like there's a kind of like that first, like you just get acclimated to the setting and
yeah.
kind of, to the space and to the whole like vibe of the show. And then like once I kind of just got those initial butterflies out of my system, I was like, okay, like now I feel like I've got a feel for this moving forward. And you know what to do, Julie. I was like, just
You
just
got it.
make it happen.
And listen, I mean, from what I've seen, you're right. You do know what you're doing and highly entertaining, and it's always good to jump on. And my big, like I said, about the diversity in wrestling, but to get those different perspectives on I think one
Yeah.
thing. What do you feel about it? And that's kind of the most fun about the interaction and watching you kind of do your thing and giving those kind of doing those review shows for AEW has been outstanding to kind of watch and get
You.
that perspective. So, no, thank you. Here we go again.
And
um,
again, like that's been a great learning experience for me too, because there's certain things that I feel like doing podcasts, especially, you learn in terms of how you speak on camera and how you want to present yourself. And I'm still, every time I watch a podcast back, I'm still learning, but I definitely feel like I can see improvements in myself from like the very first podcast that I did to more recent ones. So it's again, excuse me, really helpful to have that video reference
Yeah.
because it's really nice just to be able to watch yourself back and catch yourself. Are there little things that you do that you can change or improve upon? Like I think a big one in podcasting or radio or anything like that is throwing in words like or like.
It was a
And of
battle.
course we all do it conversationally because it's just kind of a natural thing to do sometimes when you're
Yeah, you
talking to
got it.
someone and you need to take a moment to think about something. But one tip that I got was if you need to sort of take a moment to think about something, to just stop completely and don't say anything, as opposed to throwing in some of that clutter,
That
word
filler.
clutter. And
Yeah.
yeah, that filler. And so I've been trying to be more cognizant of that. And of course, we all do it,
You
especially
do.
like if you're doing an interview
Yeah.
sort of a thing like that. I mean, it's just a natural thing to do sometimes, but that's one thing I've really been trying to improve upon, particularly for review shows where I'm getting into more meaty content versus
Yeah.
just kind of talking conversationally. But just little things like that. See,
Absolutely.
I'm doing it again. Throwing in arms and likes, but little things like that you do get better at
Yeah.
over time, and body language and things of that nature for the in-person interviews where you're looking and what your facials are and
Yeah.
timing of reactions. And there's so many little nuances to it that it just takes time for all of us to get better at. And so that's a big thing for me is I also, showing up in the locker room at PWA, I really wanted to show up with a mentality of like being willing to learn from other
Yeah.
people and trying to be sure that the talent felt respected in the sense that I had done my research on them and took the
Yeah.
time to really learn about who they are. So that's
That's
really,
huge.
that's really sort of the mentality that I want to keep moving forward. Obviously, it's good to have a natural confidence in yourself and your own abilities, but like there's always, always, always things to be learned. And there's so many experienced people in this industry that I would just give anything to learn from. So there's always like a level of humility that I think is good to keep anywhere you go.
Absolutely. Now, is there anyone specific that you kind of look to of like, I really like what they do and I really want to mold myself in that direction?
Yeah. So I guess in terms of like interviewing
Yeah,
specifically, I love Renee Paquette and I love Kathy
absolutely.
Kelly because I think that both of them have things about themselves that come across as very endearing and authentic. And um you don't feel like, I mean, they do their job well in the sense that they really highlight the talent, but there's also something special about them that really draws you into feeling a connection with
Yeah.
them as well. In terms of just like the wrestling business in general, two of my favorite people, and I've said this on some other podcasts as well, my two of my biggest inspirations growing up are Chris Jericho and Dustin Rhodes. And I actually have Dustin's entrance music as Goldust as my
Nice.
alarm clock right now.
No way.
I've had Goldust entrance music as my alarm clock for like the past like 4 years.
That's
and usually
amazing.
and usually people find it very weird. Like
I think it's amazing.
yeah, thank you.
Right?
Um, it's
Absolutely.
really, uh, it's really great music to wake up to because it
Is
kind of
it?
it kind of sounds like you're like getting ready to go on some sort of mystical.
Ta-da. Yeah,
Yeah,
right? That's amazing. That is definitely the first I've heard of it. So,
yeah.
um,
I have his entrance music as my alarm clock, and then I have Bret Hart's entrance music as my ringtone. And I've
nice.
had both of these I feel like with the pandemic, it's weird because like the past few years feels like it's gone by so quickly, but I've had their stuff on my phone for like years now that I'm thinking about
That's
it.
amazing.
Yeah, so every time somebody calls me, it's Bret Hart's music. That
Now I just want to be sitting in like a quiet meeting where everyone's serious and just hear Bret Hart's music click on from your purse.
That's me. That's probably happened before.
Absolutely. And I mean, you have half the room being like, "What is that?" And the other half being like,
Being
"You
like,
listen to
wait,
is that
you like
Bret?
this?
Is that Bret?"
But
Uh,
yeah,
that's
I
awesome.
just a couple of people that I look up to and admire so much. One thing that I love about Dustin, and again, like I've said this in a couple of other interviews as well, but it never gets old to talk about.
Never.
I feel like the Goldust character, I remember him speaking in an interview about how that was kind of like one of those 90s, weird 90s characters that Vince McMahon created. And had that been given to the wrong person or like executed poorly, I feel like that character could have been such a flop.
Mhm.
But because that's one of those characters that you have to commit to 110% in order for it to really work and come across the right way.
Yeah.
And so looking back, like I actually have Goldust's debut match.
Yeah.
I have that saved on, I have like a playlist on YouTube with some of my favorite videos. And that's one of those videos that I just watch periodically, like when I want to feel emotions.
Yeah. That's amazing.
I think it was against Marty Jannetty
Yes.
at In Your House. That was like his actual debut match as Goldust. And
Yep.
actually that was back when Vince McMahon still did commentary, I believe. And
Good stays. Yeah.
I don't think people even realized that he was the CEO of the company yet. But that was like Vince McMahon's brainchild. And again, it was a character that if you weren't fully committed and you kind of like half did it, I feel like it wouldn't really work.
Yeah.
But especially at that period in time, because I feel like back in the 90s, that was even more so of like a cutting edge abstract type of character.
Yeah.
But the way that he committed to it was so brilliant. And I remember watching an interview that he and Marlena had done on Conan O'Brien, where they were still fully in character despite being on programming that was not directly part of WWE. And I remember him like leaning into Conan and like stroking him. And they were promoting an upcoming pay-per-view, and
Yep.
Marlena's just kind of kicking back, and she's sort of being like the more like androgynous member of the pairing.
Yeah.
But I just feel like you don't see that a lot
Mhm.
anymore these days, people going elsewhere on other talk shows and things like that and being fully in character, especially to such a degree. So I've always really admired his character work as Goldust, and I admire the fact that as he has become more of a veteran in the business, that he seems to be one of the people that's really dedicated to helping and lifting up the younger talent.
Absolutely.
Because I feel like it's really easy for some people to be focused on their own career and putting themselves over and making themselves look good. But he really has a good sense of when to like step back a little bit and say, like, you know what, this isn't about me right now. I'm gonna help this younger generation shine. And that's something that I respect about him so much. And actually I had met him um a while back, and I believe I told him that I had this was like years ago before the pandemic. I told him that I had his entrance music as my alarm clock, and I think he was like, why do you wake up to that every day?
Yeah, pardon?
But was very, very cool, a very cool person to meet in person as well. And I always love that when like you meet your idols in person and they're just as friendly and as cool as like you always hoped that they would be. So he's definitely continuously been someone that I really look up to. I'm still on the Dustin Rhodes should be a world champion train.
You're on that one, are you?
Yeah,
I mean, I would like to see him get a. Sorry, go ahead.
I know Goldust was an intercontinental champion, but I
Hmm.
am still very heavy on in his prime. I would have loved to see Goldust as the WWF World Champion.
Yeah, no, I would
So
still love to see like a Dustin run. I know we've talked a lot lately about the twilight of his career and winding down in 2023, but I would love to see him get a solid, like, just a compelling run based on that.
me too. I was saying that actually within the past couple of weeks. I was like, because I know that he had mentioned wanting to retire
Yeah.
probably within the next year, and so I hope that he leaves us with a bang.
Absolutely. I mean, and like you said, he's had an amazing career. And I think one of the phenomenal things about him in particular was it wasn't something that he had come up with or that he was thrilled about, but he jumped right
Yeah,
into it. That's amazing.
I remember him saying in that interview that I had watched where he spoke about it, saying that like it was Vince McMahon's idea, and I don't think it struck him as like an amazing idea at first,
No.
but I think he had mentioned something along the lines of he felt as though Vince had seen something within him that like he almost didn't even see
Yeah.
within himself at the time. But the way that he executed that character again was just so brilliant, and like had anybody else tried to do that and had not been fully committed, I feel like it could have been another Dr. Isaac Yankem type of character. And so I'm so thrilled with how he committed and how we were able to see the evolution of the Goldust character over the years as he was kind of thrown into different situations. And there was that period in time when he tagged with Booker T, and I feel like we kind of saw a
Oh
more
my God.
humorous side of
Yeah.
Goldust. And so and we kind of saw an evolution a little bit with like his gear and his face paint and how he presents himself. So
No, absolutely, absolutely amazing. And I'm gonna quickly just click on some of the comments in the
yeah,
chat, just so
absolutely.
the fans don't feel ignored today. But Russell, good to see you. Thank you for being here. Hagen's in the house. Hassan says, "Happy New Year."
Happy New Year to you too. This is gonna be, I feel like I'm not usually like a big new year, new me type of person, but going into 2023, I was just like, this is our year, you guys. We've
You
got
know what?
this.
I'm right there with you. I had a lot of optimism for 2023, so it was
I
nice.
did too.
Let's get going. And like I said, it's funny because like we're both kind of mirroring each other as far as watching it kind of develop from we're still very much new and figuring it all out, but at the same time, there's been a lot of kind of moments to kind of celebrate and be happy about
Yeah,
it. So
a lot of
yeah,
positive wins and a lot of exciting things on the horizon, I think.
absolutely. Jordan, hope you're doing well today. Thank you for being here.
Good afternoon, Jordan. Happy birthday. Today is Cora Jade's birthday. I did
Yes.
see that as well. Happy birthday, Cora Jade.
I think apparently it's Jim Duggan as well. I did not know that.
Oh,
One of my
really? I
old
didn't
faves.
realize
So
that.
a big O and a thumbs up in the chat for Jim Duggan. There you
Very nice. Happy birthday, Jim.
go. Alexander says hello. Jojo, how you doing, buddy? Hope
How
you're
you
doing
doing,
well.
Jojo? What's good?
Carlito in the Rumble, says Lauren. How does that strike you?
Um, did they actually announce? I haven't been
I
on Raw Music. Did they announce that today, or is that just a?
I have no confirmation. Lauren is our
Yeah,
current source.
I haven't seen anything about it yet, but I haven't really been on my phone much, so I don't know.
Right. I haven't heard that either. I know he was rumored last year as well, going into
I
it.
remember last
Yeah.
year he was rumored, and then I feel like there was something that changed at the last minute. I don't remember the
Mhm.
full story behind it offhand, but I like when they don't announce their Rumble surprises in advance, because I feel like they did
Yes.
a lot of that last year. They announced like the vast majority
Too many.
um of yeah, of people
Yeah.
returning in advance. And I was like, that's the fun of the Rumble, is when you hear
Yeah.
the buzzer go off and you see like who's potentially making their return. So I like keeping it a surprise.
Yeah, I'm a sucker for a good surprise pop, and I think in general,
Me
a lot of
too.
times with yeah, right? Like, I think a lot of times they get into like, well, if we leak out who's coming on Monday or Wednesday, we'll get more viewers. So, like even now we're watching Cody Rhodes return, and usually heading towards a Rumble, if he's going to be involved, it would be a surprise. Like, we saw it with John Cena,
Right.
like, oh
And
my God. And they're kind of taking that away, right?
yeah, I don't like, I mean, I think it's okay if they do it with like one or two people,
Yeah.
if you kind of give people a little taste. I
Mhm.
think that that's okay, but I'm like, don't give away the big surprises.
Yeah,
Don't, because that's part of the magic of the Royal Rumble. And
absolutely,
so I
and
remember last year being kind of bummed because I think there might have been like one or two there weren't really like a lot of big
no.
surprises because we knew all of them in advance.
Yeah, particularly with the women's rumble, I felt like they kinda rolled out, like,
Yeah,
especially all the
and to
alum that was coming back.
yeah, and to me, like, I've been really enjoying the women's rumble since it's come to fruition
Yeah,
because I mean, number one, it's just like a huge milestone for women's wrestling and for the women's division in general. But I feel like the fact that the women's division is a little bit smaller, you have more opportunities to have cool surprises. And so I was like, don't ruin all of them in advance. I was like,
absolutely.
that's part of the fun of seeing
Mhm.
like which one of your favorites are going to come back. Like I remember the very first Rumble when like the Bella twins came back and
Yep,
Nikki came back after this major like is she ever even going to wrestle ever again?
yep,
And like that's such a cool nostalgia moment to have,
absolutely.
and seeing the surprise. Like you don't want I don't want to know when Cody's coming back. Like
Yeah.
surprise me. He'll
Yeah,
be
and I
back when
mean
he's back, and we'll all be happy about it. But you don't need to give me a play-by-play
yeah.
countdown.
Yeah, I feel like very much they're giving Cody kinda like that old Triple H treatment of, like, let's follow the journey of the hero returning, and
Yeah, which
he's over as hell as a babyface at this point.
yeah, I mean, I just think I'm like I I get it, but at the same time, I'm like you don't really need to do that with
No,
him
no.
because he's gonna get such a wild pop when he comes back anyways. He's going to get such a huge reaction when he comes back anyways. Like we don't need I just feel like we don't need the play by play. I don't need that in my life.
Yeah, my preference
I want
is
to be surprised when he comes back and have
yeah.
my little like oh my gosh, he's recovered
Yeah.
moment.
You wanna tell me on Raw all the things he went through and show me a little video package of his surgery and
Yeah.
all that fun stuff? Great. But yeah,
Yeah.
to your point, I mean, that's one of the allures. That's why we all love that countdown, and you get that buzz and they're like, "Who is it?" And then, we've had years like last year where it lacked that. This year, lot of speculation, lots of rumors, lots of who could it be? Is it this star from all different companies? And
Yeah.
I mean, the wrestling world has been a buzz about this particular Rumble.
Yeah, well I feel like I've seen so many headlines also in recent weeks about like New Japan names that
Yeah.
WWE's been interested in. Part of me wonders like it's interesting because I feel like back in 2019 before the pandemic, I feel like their roster was so stacked and I feel like people were kind of complaining because they were saying like oh WWE is hoarding talent. And then they
Yeah.
did a mass releases during the pandemic and then I feel like they almost thinned out their roster too much.
Yep.
And so now obviously with the Triple H creative regime they've been bringing a lot of people back, which I've been loving because I feel like a lot of the people that got released were people that I still very much cared about and wanted to see what they were going to do next, and there were people that really flourished in like the black and gold NXT. And so I've been really happy about a lot of the people that they've been bringing back, but I'm starting to wonder a little bit if there's a lot of interest in signing all of these new independent names. Is
Yeah.
their roster going to become too saturated again where they're going to need to revisit releases? So I guess that's kind of like a to be determined who actually ends up getting signed amongst all these
Yes.
rumors and then how things go from there.
Yeah, I think the one of the things that I found interesting was Triple H continually talked about depth, bringing depth and wanting that depth. So we weren't watching the same, the middle of every show looked identical for months, right?
Yeah.
So to his credit, he's got a plan. Now, I mean, I think actually before I get to that, I'm going to quickly click on this comment from MCW.
Okay.
This is a kind of a funny comment, made me chuckle. The gold dust with Luna, our green and orange gold dust.
Yeah, and it's funny because I don't know, have you watched the Dark Side of the Ring
Yes.
documentary about Luna? I thought
Hmm.
that was so interesting. Learning more about her background because I was born in the 90s. So
Hmm.
a lot of this era, I sort of had to play catch up with after the fact
Yes.
because I was like a toddler and or an egg when all of this was happening. So
Right?
I've had to play a lot of catch up, and I didn't realize like the complexity of Luna's, I guess, just her background in wrestling in general and her life until I watched that documentary. But
Yeah.
I do think that's kind of like an interesting pairing, just in the sense that similar to his pairing with Marlena, I feel like it's almost like this juxtaposition of
Yep.
him being sort of like the more gender fluid,
Yep.
sort of I guess sexually ambiguous of the
Yep.
pairing, and then the woman sort of being the one who's like got the reins,
Yeah.
which was kind of cool and like very cutting edge, specifically for that period in time.
Definitely pushing the envelope, and I mean, that was some of the things. Like, I mean, this is a guy that, has a big match with Roddy Piper, and he ends up, in a garter and, panties,
Yeah.
and and it didn't kill his career, he kept coming, like, it
No,
was a
and
big
Dustin
moment for him.
Rhodes is still with us today. I mean,
Amazing.
that's another one of the things that I love about him, and I'd also mentioned Chris Jericho, is that these are two guys that have been in the business for like my whole life
Yep.
now, literally my entire life, and then some. And they are still, especially Chris Jericho, I give him so much credit. He always finds ways to reinvent himself and stay relevant and um stay like at the top
Mhm.
of his game. I mean, how many monikers
A
has
lot.
this guy copyrighted and trademarked
Just a
over the
lot.
years? And it's like every single thing, whether he's a heel or a baby face, it's like he constantly reinvents himself. And every time he does it, it's gold. It's like there's never been a gimmick that I can think of where I said, like, you know what, this really doesn't work for me. It's like every single one, it just
Yeah.
becomes something great.
I might debate you on a couple of those things
Okay.
right now, but, I mean, long-standing, Jericho, a good old Canadian boy like myself,
Yes. I
so
can
it
I can hear the accent actually.
I don't have an accent, what? Oh, no. But, no, I mean, Chris is a legend, he's a Hall of Famer. I don't know if I love some of the last year of his career where, and I
Okay.
think I have some issues more that how highly it's praised, even though I mean, we look at other years of his career where he was outstanding and going up
Yeah.
some big name talents, and it's a funny year. I mean, like, it's hard for me to celebrate a Jericho over, Colt Cabana win. We kind of knew what that
Mhm.
was, but yeah, to your point, I mean, he's managed to do it for decades. That's
Yes.
outstanding.
Absolutely. Like I said, literally my entire lifespan.
Yeah,
I actually I have right here, I have to show you really quickly. This is my own custom list of Jericho
amazing.
that I keep on display in my room. He signed it, and then this was like I met him back in maybe 2017. I think it was right when his book was coming out. No is a four-letter word, and it was like right as he was kind of coming off of his last WWE run.
Okay.
And so that was when the list of Jericho was just kind of, it was still relevant, but he was kind of like getting ready to move on to the next thing. And so I had made this for him to sign, and I I told him, I handed it to him, and he was like, "Oh, like," because mine's all, of course, pink and
Yeah,
sparkly in true
and
Julie
sparkly.
fashion. And so he was like, "This is so crafty," and I handed it to him, and I was like, "You just made the list." And then I think he was kind of like, "Okay, well, if I'm going on the list, then you're going on the list with me." And so actually, right underneath his name, it says Y2 Julie.
Y2 Julie. Nice.
And that is one of my prized possessions that I keep here at my little desk. So,
So if anybody was
yes,
wondering, you're officially on the list.
I am officially on the list of Jericho. I also have Dustin is on the list that I have. Mick Foley, who was actually on TV, the first person ever on the list of Jericho, and then I have Enzo and uh, formerly Big Cass, who's now Big Bill Morrissey.
Big Bill. We're still debating if we like the
Yeah,
Big Bill
I've
toys.
heard mixed. I've heard a lot of people saying that they don't like the name Big Bill. I actually don't think I mind it
Okay.
because, well, I remember, so in WWE he was obviously Big Cass, and then he
Mhm.
worked the Indies for a little bit shortly after, and I feel like he had a few different names. Like he had gone by the Kaz XL for a little bit. I feel like he had kind of toyed around with a few names, but he was trying to do something that wasn't overly similar to Big Cass.
Yeah.
Didn't seem like, I think he had mentioned trying to do Big Kaz with like Z's, and then he was like, no, that's just too similar. I don't mind him going by William Morrissey, or Bill, because obviously, I mean, that's his real name. I'm like, that's
Yeah.
easy enough. But I think Big Bill, it kind of reminded me. I feel like there's some other like miscellaneous like things in pop culture that it almost reminded me of a little
Yeah.
bit, that I didn't mind him using that. Just as something that's like a little, well, number one emphasizes his size, and number two is just a little bit different than going by like his plain
Yeah.
Jane, given birth name.
Yeah.
Not that there's anything wrong with that, but I mean, I liked the fact that it's kind of short and simple and
Just
sweet.
to the point, right? Big Bill.
Yeah.
And I
And
think
I
that
like
was
the
what
alliteration of Big Bill.
Yeah, I think some people are just, it comes off a little simple, right? Like the Big Bill. Like
Yeah,
you're
I
like,
mean,
"Oh, okay."
I personally don't mind it.
I kinda like W. Morrissey. I was okay with that. I didn't
I
realize
was
he was
okay with
itching
that,
for a
yeah.
change.
I was
So,
okay with that too. I mean,
yeah.
I don't have like I can't say that I have like really strong negative or positive feelings towards either one. Like I'm just fine with whatever.
Yeah. I think that's a fair argument. I don't think it's it's one of
I
those
don't
things
think
where
there's like anything particularly like amazing or terrible about either one, where like
yeah,
I really feel very strongly in either direction.
right. MCW says, "Should've stuck with Morrissey." I kind of agree.
That's fair. I
Uh,
kind of like I don't know. I kind of like Big Bill. I feel like it has a little ring to it.
I think for me, he just doesn't come off like a Big Bill. Like, Big Bill's a bulky guy with, like, a plaid shirt, and I don't know why, and that's
That's
just the way
fair.
it works for my head. Like, that over there, that's Big Bill, and he, like, spits into a bucket. Like, I don't
You
know.
know what? I could, now that you say that, I could kind of see it a little bit.
Mhm.
I
Maybe we
could
give him a
kind of see
cowboy hat.
that would actually be interesting. I switch
Big
up his
Bill.
gimmick, if they kind of like switched up his gimmick a little bit, because right now I feel like he's just kind of, he has a very simplistic
Yeah.
gimmick right now,
Mhm.
of just kind of being like this big heater. Like his, I like that he kind of switched from doing like traditional ring gear to just doing more like street clothes. I think
Yeah.
that that's a good look for him. And
Yeah.
now, I mean, he's in great shape now. He's super cut up, and
Yeah.
I have to give him so much credit, because he's been very open about a lot of the struggles that he has faced with mental health and alcoholism and
Yes.
things, relating to that. And I know that he has worked closely with DDP. I know that he
Yep.
has mentioned his agent, Doug Lawson, being somebody that helped him tremendously. I actually met Doug as well,
Okay.
because I met him at an event with Enzo, and he was actually a
Nice.
really cool guy.
Mhm.
Um, we had a nice little conversation, and I know that he has done a lot of self work to get to where he is now, and it is really nice to see him flourish after sharing, all of the struggles, the very public struggles that he went through. It's nice to see him have like a solid spot within AEW and have a cool manager, amazing manager in Stokely Hathaway. And
Batman.
yeah, and so it's nice to see now he saw he's engaged to Lexi Nair, who's actually
Yeah.
DDP's stepdaughter, and so it's good to see him doing well, and to
Yes.
see like a little full circle redemption story like that. You've got to feel good when you see someone come out on top like that. So I've got to give him
Yeah.
that. I have to give him that credit.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, huge credit. I mean, for him to go through what he went through, especially publicly, right? I mean, that's the other
Yes.
caveat to it is, he went through some very serious moments where,
Yeah, and I
realistically, I
mean,
think he would tell us he didn't know if he was going to be here. So,
right.
kudos for sure.
Yeah, it's hard to go through something like that privately,
Yeah.
let alone in the public eye when everyone has an opinion and
Hmm.
everyone has a theory about things that are happening with you behind the scenes without really knowing. And I mean, that's something we see a lot in wrestling, and I guess it's just in the entertainment
Yeah.
industry in general is, with the dirt sheets and things like that, there's all these stories that hit the public, and sometimes there's only like a fraction of that story that's really true, or
Hmm.
pieces of the story that are true, but that, like, through getting told so many times, it's like things kind of get misconstrued
Absolutely.
over time by the time that they really make it into the public eye. So it's good, like, working with Fightful. I know Sean does a really good job of sort of vetting things and trying to make sure that he gets information from direct sources
Yeah.
and gets like the most accurate information possible. And so it has been really good for me to work with somebody like that,
Yeah.
who I know is dedicated to putting forth true information and not just like whatever hearsay sort of comes up. So quick side tangent, but
Dang. Yeah.
it's interesting, like, being a little bit more connected behind the scenes in
Yeah.
wrestling now, like the things that you hear versus like the things that you see actually posted
Yeah.
online, headlines that you actually see posted. So
Yeah, absolutely. And I mean, it's funny because Big Nick, who's in the chat right now, the other
yes,
side of my dynamic duo.
yes,
Yeah, no, him and I were actually having a conversation about Sean this week, and obviously and it kind of transitions nicely to where I wanted to take this,
yes,
because Robert had a comment about the Tony Khan buying WWE, and of course the big story this week was the Saudi Arabia stepping in to purchase the WWE, and it blew up like wildfire. And that kind of led us to this conversation about Sean. And one of the reliable sources that we turn to tends to come out without, the bias, kind of covers both sides the way it is. And not everyone's like that anymore. Even some of the respected writers from the past have ventured into very biased writing, and the dirt sheets are the dirt sheets. So that's got to be crazy for you because you're on the inside and having these conversations with people, and then you see these reports and you're like, wait, what? Like,
yeah.
what is going on?
That's definitely happened a few times, and it's like I said, it's almost like a game of telephone sometimes with certain headlines, because it's like one person tweets something or says something, and then
Mhm.
like people start repeating it, but it's like the more they start repeating it, the more they might repeat it slightly differently to the
Yep.
next person, and then like by the time it makes its way through the food chain, it's like a different story, or and everyone's kind of like, where did this come from to begin with?
Yeah.
So I think, yeah, I have to give huge props to Sean, because I know that he works really, really hard. Anytime people do come to him with big stories and big information, to make sure that he's really validating everything before he goes public with anything, which
Mhm.
is super respectable with the amount of like craziness that we
Yeah,
see
especially over the last while, like the last year or so, it's been
yeah, on
insane.
Facebook and Twitter. I don't have a Twitter account at the moment, just
I know, I
because
went looking.
yeah, well, I just feel like wrestling Twitter is wild. And I was like, I can't, unless I like really feel compelled to rejoin at some point. I was like, I'm just gonna not do this
Yeah.
right now, because that's a lot of stress that I don't know that I want to sign up for, unless I really
It's
feel,
chaos.
yeah, unless I really feel like career wise it would be beneficial for me to have a Twitter account. And like, you guys know where to find me elsewhere.
Absolutely. We'll definitely remind everybody before we leave here today. But yeah, no, I mean, yeah, I mean, one of the biggest stories this week, and Sean was got caught up with it. And actually, quick side note on Sean, I will give Sean a shout out. he publicly tweeted that he's a fan of my Toronto Maple Leafs. I don't know how that
Oh,
happened,
good.
but so I will give a big shout out to Sean for having
Oh,
good
I love that for you guys.
taste. Right? But with that being said, I mean, and he was definitely caught up in the Saudi Arabia thing this week, and some people had opinions about whether it should have been reported or not reported. We reported it, but we report the speculation. And I would
Right.
argue that Sean, you said he checks his sources. If he's really quick to recant if anything is off. But yeah, we saw it this week with just wildfire of a story that wasn't true.
Yeah, and I think a lot of people felt like they had to talk about it because there was so much speculation online, and a lot of people asking about it. So I feel like for a lot of the major players in like the wrestling news industry, a lot of people kind of had to get online. Like I know Tuesday night when they do the NXT post show for Fightful, Sean did hop on for a while just to kind of say like this is something that's going around right now. I've been getting a lot of questions. I have not heard anything
Yeah.
confirmed from any sources within WWE. This is just, he kind of just laid out like, this is the information that I have been hearing, as hearsay at this point. So
Yeah.
I think there were a lot of people that just kind of like had to acknowledge it as the elephant in the room, but were good about being like, this is not confirmed by anybody.
Exactly. And I think that's the main difference, right? You'll see these
Yeah.
headlines, and we'll talk a little more about headlines in a minute, but yeah, you see these headlines and it's just like a hint, and or like it's the obvious overture of like so and so wants his job back, or these people are unhappy, and you're like, well, wait a minute, obviously that's the case, but it's just those clicks, right? Everyone looking for those
Yeah,
clicks.
it's like the clickbait.
Mm-hmm.
Like, and then sometimes like half the time it's you click on something, they make it sound like it's this big dramatic story, and then
Hmm.
you click on it and it's like something that somebody said in passing as a joke.
Yeah.
You're like, why is this a
Yeah.
story? It was like slow news day. Why
Yeah,
is this a
you
story?
how bored are we right now? Okay.
Yeah, exactly.
Now, with all of that being said, one thing I did really want to ask you,
Yes.
before we went anywhere, I was really curious. And you touched on it earlier with women's wrestling, the evolution of women's wrestling.
Yes.
You grew up with two brothers. You became a wrestling fan as a young girl. Again, not the most common thing, especially in 2022. How do you feel like the as a fan how it's changed, but also kind of watching it from the inner workings?
I mean, from when I was a child to now, women's wrestling is like night and day. I mean, I think we
Yeah.
can see it in a number of ways. Like when I was little, there's definitely like a few women that I grew up idolizing that, were more than just eye candy. But I
Yeah.
do feel like when I was younger, that was the way that women were very much portrayed in wrestling a lot of the time, was like being more of the eye candy. And
Yep.
I feel like those women had to work, the ones that had like a legitimate fitness wrestling background that like wanted to be taken seriously had to work like 10 times as hard to
Hmm.
be taken seriously and to then pave the way for the women of today. And I think, I mean, now, even if you just look at the size of the women's roster in WWE and you
Hmm.
see how the women's rosters continued to grow in
Yep.
AEW, and you see how many women are killing it on the independent scene, and you see like the breadth of what they're able to do from a technical standpoint.
Hmm.
They've come so far. And I mean, now, we've seen in WWE specifically the evolution of um including women in like the war games, having a women's Royal Rumble, having
Yep.
like a women's Money in the Bank match, being put on the same level as the men in terms of, anytime they do like a major pay-per-view or anything of that nature, it's not just about like the men's Royal Rumble match
Yep.
or the men, whatever, the men's Money in the Bank ladder match. It's like now they pump up the women's match and the women's championship in that same way.
Mhm.
And a lot of the time, like I actually end up, I kind of look forward, like I said, I kind of look forward to the women's Royal Rumble a little bit more, honestly, just because number one, it's newer,
Yeah.
and number two, like I think because the women's roster has traditionally been a bit smaller than the men's,
Yeah.
I get really, really excited to see the surprises in the women's rumble, like which legends are going to come back, who's injured that's going to make a comeback,
Yeah.
is there someone from NXT that's going to come up? Like, I think that there's so many cool surprises. And even
Yeah.
like in NXT, like they did a women's battle royal this past week
Yes.
for
Third.
the
Yeah.
number
20.
one contendership
Yes.
for Roxanne Perez's championship. And I, before they like announced who is going to be in the match, I was thinking, I was like, they actually have like quite a thick women's roster, even in NXT, to choose from, and a lot of like new people coming up
Yeah.
that are super athletic and I could see potentially being big stars. I don't know how closely you follow NXT, but there's a couple
Every week.
women. Yeah, Sol Ruka is one that
Yeah.
I've been keeping my eyes out for. I think she kind of reminds me of like Bianca Belair in a little bit, where I'm like, I feel like she could be like a breakout star with just her athleticism and
Mhm.
her gymnastics background and her muscularity and everything. Like she just has a look like where she looks like she could be a star. And some
Yeah.
of the things that she can do in the ring are things that not everybody can do and that are really like they really have a wow factor to them.
Absolutely.
And also, there's another woman, Jakara Jackson. She was
Yeah.
on Level Up a couple of times, and
Mhm.
there's a couple that like I have my eyes out for. Where I'm like, I feel like they're going to be big breakout stars. But even just thinking about like the fact that they had that 20-woman battle royal, and I was like, they still have like people left over from
Yeah.
that
They had a
if
good
they
amount.
used it.
Mhm.
Yeah, and so it's really cool to see where things have come from when I was little. And like I had mentioned before, I had a Stephanie McMahon action figure, I had a Lita action figure, but like some of the women's action figures were like harder to come by because there weren't
Yeah.
as many of them.
Mhm.
And now that's not the case at all. And there's so many big names, Charlotte Flair, um, Mercedes
Monet.
Varnado. Yeah, Mercedes Monet now,
Right?
that are doing like making like really cool comebacks and reinventing themselves, and they're becoming major names not just in wrestling, but I feel like they're starting to catch on to like pop culture a little bit with some of the things that they're doing. So I think it's been a tremendous upward trajectory. And I think that, there's still more work to be done, but we're on our way. And I think it's just going to keep getting better and better in the years to come. I mentioned briefly the AEW roster. Obviously, AEW's only been around since 2019
Yep.
officially. But
Mhm.
even since then, I think we've seen their women's roster bulk up a little bit. And I think we've seen some big names um, who are not just big names in the sense that there's like notoriety attached to them, but also big names that are really technically talented in the ring
Yeah.
coming onto the roster. And so that excites me too, to see where they're going. I just think that like the wrestling world is so full of opportunities right now in general, but especially for the women. And that makes me really glad to see as someone that grew up in this.
No, absolutely. I mean, it's exciting. I mean, look at this week alone. You talked about the 20 women battle royal we had. Last night on Rampage, we have a hellacious street fight.
Yes, I love those street fights. I know some people, can go. I love those street fights. I think it's cool as hell.
Yeah, you know what? We started out like because we do the live reaction for all the shows. So we're here all week long, just giving instant kind of off the cuff, response to whatever we're seeing. So as we're heading into that match, we're like, why are we getting this match? It's kind of interesting booking. We didn't really expect it. And then by the end, we were like, man, I like that way more than I anticipated. It was
Yeah,
it
I
was
love.
actually highly entertaining, and they went all out. I mean, Ruby was gushing.
Yeah, and I loved it. I feel like it was almost like a follow up to the match that they had done on
Yeah.
Rampage, like a little over a year ago,
Yeah.
with the Bunny, Penelope
Yeah.
Ford, Anna Jay, and Ty
Mhm.
Mello then. And I thought that match, I feel like that match also got some mixed reviews in terms of
Yeah.
being like, oh, well, like, why are the women doing this? Like, why aren't we getting just like a straightforward technical wrestling match? Why are they? I was like, I thought this was really cool. Maybe it's just me, but I was like, I thought that was badass. And
Absolutely.
I, if I were a women's wrestler, I would feel like a badass doing that. So
Yeah.
I applauded them. I also, again, like I mentioned, the women's roster in AEW sort of like bulking up over these past couple of years, and I love that they had Ruby Soho in that match, because
Mhm.
I feel like Sean and I have mentioned in the past in some of our podcasts, like I know Ruby was out injured for a while, but I feel like
Her
she
poor nose.
is, yeah, like I feel like she was she's kind of capable of doing more than like the opportunity that she's been allotted thus far. And so I'm always excited to see more of her on TV. I hope that they
Yeah.
pull her back into the championship picture
Yes.
at some point, because I feel like we've mentioned her sort of being like always a bridesmaid, never a bride. Like she's kind of
Yeah.
like this close. Like whenever they do sort of put her in the championship picture, she's always like this close, but then
Yeah.
they never quite pull the trigger. So I'm always happy to see her get more opportunities. And I really like Willow. I remember her being on AEW Dark
Yeah.
a couple times over the course of these past few years before she was signed full time. And she was somebody who I think generally got very positive reaction. And
Yeah.
it's hard with Dark because there's just so much content and there's so many
Yeah.
people that they bring in from the independent scene. But I remember her sort of being a standout as somebody who was particularly good and sort of well liked
Yeah.
and noticed. So I really like her. I like the way that they've been booking her recently and sort of giving her more opportunity. And
Mhm.
she's solid in the ring. I think she has a cool look. I think that she has a lot of potential. And so I was glad to see
Mhm.
all of these women on my TV.
Yeah, and I mean, Willow's a funny one because I was very kind of skeptical at first when they started kind of booking her a little more and giving her a little more of a rub. It was like, who is she? Like, where did she come from? Didn't like, and but she just kind of gradually wins you over. Like she's
Yeah.
the attitude, the charisma, the smile. And then last night I was joking with Nick of like, Willow's getting over with me. I don't care because she
Yeah.
was so into it, and it's not just taking the moves, but it's those moments between the moves. And I'm like,
Yeah.
I like what she's doing. So
I really like the way that she works. I remember one of her matches, like within the past couple of weeks. I really liked. I felt like she looked very clean.
hmm
She was somebody that, like, when I was really watching her ring work,
yep,
you could tell she was well trained and it looked very clean, and I liked
yeah,
that a lot. But I also liked like the entrance music that they gave her, the
yeah,
charisma that she has, like the sort of the gimmick and the baby face
very,
persona that they sort of slapped on her. I think that it's working for her so far,
yeah,
and I really liked it. I think the you kind of brought up a good point when you mentioned like not really knowing who she was at first. I think the one thing with AEW that I would like to see more improvement on in the future is just the fact that they do bring in so many independent talents on
yep,
Dark and a lot of names from New Japan and other places, which I think is amazing because it gives so many people opportunities. But I would love to see them give a little bit more backstory or
yeah,
explain some of these people that they're bringing in a little bit better. Like if you could even just make like a really quick video package, or like
yep,
throw up some
hmm
quick facts about them, their history,
yep,
just so it's not like, hey, so and so showed up and like
yeah,
we're supposed to be excited about it, but if you don't follow everything, then you don't really know who it
yeah,
is. Like I feel like sometimes it's catered a little bit more so to like the really hardcore fans as
hmm
opposed to sort of making it simple enough for just the casual fan to get
yeah,
invested in, unless they like continuously watch
mhm.
somebody over time and develop that investment in them. Like Willow, watching her on Dynamite or Rampage a couple weeks and then developing the investment, as opposed to like when she first came in, maybe giving a little better backstory as to like where we've seen her before and why we should care that she's here.
Exactly. That's exactly what I was going to say is why should we care about what's happening? I mean, we had Juice Robinson pop up this week, a guy
Yes.
that I'm a huge fan of, but I
Yeah,
know
but
that
if you
as,
don't know him,
yeah,
if you don't follow the, like, say you just follow AEW and you're not following the rest of the wrestling world, it'd just be nice to have more explanation for the casual fan.
yeah, absolutely. I think they could definitely tie that in a little better. And then one other, well, we'll transition into two parts, but the
Sure.
first one is another part on this topic. I mean, another big thing in women's wrestling right now that everybody's talking about is I personally thought we were going to see the end of Mickie James last night, and she goes over Jordan Grace, and a lot of people shocked about that this morning, talking about it coming out of Hard to Kill. Did you catch it? Like, what are your thoughts on that?
I still have to catch up. I caught some of the highlights. I
Hmm.
still have to catch up on, because there's just so much content in
Yeah,
wrestling. Like
tons.
sometimes I get messages from people being like, "Did you see this, and this?" And I'm like, I need to catch up on all of it, but like I will let you know once I do.
Mhm.
I did catch part of that though. The thing is, like, Mickie James is somebody that I have always respected as like
Yep,
a very very solid sound technical women's wrestler. And I almost like, I remember like towards the end of her WWE run, like I feel like they booked her sort of sparingly at
yeah,
times. And I was like, where is Mickie James? Like, I
yep,
want to see more of her, because then like you could see like when they did give her, I remember the match that she had at Revolution. It was the tag match that she and Alicia Fox
yep,
they were accompanied by Alexa Bliss, and they had the match against Trish Stratus and Lita.
yeah,
And I remember seeing that. I was like, Mickie James has been around. Again, she's been one of those people that's been around since I was pretty young.
yep,
And I was like, she can still
yep,
go. And it's not just a matter of like being able to like get in there and still like sort of wrestle and sort, like
yeah,
she's a very like clean technical
yeah,
wrestler. Like there's certain people that I watch, like Serena Deeb is one of them, who like you when you really watch like the ins and outs of like their transitions between like submission holds and things like that, and
yep,
just some of the very very little nuances in their matches, like they're just a cut above a lot of, your
yeah,
average joes. Like they really
mhm,
have that technical prowess
yeah,
fine tuned.
yeah, just
um
dialed right in.
yeah, and so I'm always happy to see Mickie James with a championship and with that relevance. I'm almost wondering, I know last year she had shown up in the Royal Rumble with her championship, and I'm wondering if maybe they could even do the same thing again this year. I guess you
Yeah,
never know if they
I
did
think
it
it's
once.
been rumored, yeah.
Um, I was kind of thinking about that a little bit last night. I was like, oh, like I wonder if they'll pull another like bring her back to WWE for this one special event with her championship. We'll see.
Yeah, and then I think I was almost the opposite going in, where I was like, a lot of rumors about her and Nick being involved in the Royal Rumble or being involved with WWE.
Yeah.
And with those rumors, I was like, okay, well, she'll lose. She'll say goodbye to everybody. They built it up. They had her family in the audience, like the video packages leading into the event.
Yeah.
And then she won, and everybody was like, wait, what?
Right. That's it. I love that. I love the surprise element. I love it.
Mhm.
And I love the fact that they built it up to sort of lead you to feel like it was probably going to be the opposite outcome. I'm the type of person, like, I always love when it's like the unexpected happens. I love,
Absolutely.
even in movies too. Like I love watching movies where there's like a surprise twist in the
Yep.
middle. And it's like you think it's good. You think it's going one way and then it ends up going another way. I just think anytime you can throw people for a loop like that and you get people
Mhm.
talking,
Yep.
clearly this has gotten people talking,
Yep.
you're doing your job right.
Absolutely. And I mean, I think they nailed it last night with that particular event, and it was a great show last night. So, but with all that being said, I mean, we've blown through a ton. This is just flying by. This is amazing. Um, uh, One last thing, you did bring her up, and we'll talk about this, and then we'll play a little game before
Sure.
we head out. But last question, you did bring up Sasha Banks, Mercedes Monet, a lot following her around, a lot of speculation. There's some people still holding on hope that she'll be in the Rumble. We know she's going to be in San Jose. Obviously, you've been following this story along. What is your take on everything that's happened with Sasha over the last year?
I don't I don't think we're gonna see her back in if she I wouldn't be surprised if she comes back to WWE eventually,
Hmm.
but I don't think it's gonna be this soon. I
Okay.
think I feel like she has a lot that she wants to explore. I'm getting the idea that she has a lot that she wants to explore elsewhere
Yes.
before she does. I wouldn't be surprised if she does wind up back in WWE at some point and sort of like gets back in touch with those roots. I know she had mentioned in a recent interview, she was like, I didn't even think that like WWE was gonna want me because she was like, I didn't think that like I fit um the mold of kind of like what they were looking for years back. She was like, I didn't even think that I was gonna get in there. And so I think that especially with the landscape of the wrestling world right now and the fact that there's so many opportunities, so many different places, I wouldn't be surprised if she shows up elsewhere.
Okay.
I don't want to put this out there as a prediction and then be wrong and then
Do
have
it.
people be like, "Oh, Julie, you were wrong."
Clip
But
it
I
and
was
put it out
kind of
there.
thinking, I know there was speculation about her showing up on Dynamite
Yes.
as Soraya's mystery partner instead of Tony Storm.
Yep.
And then obviously that didn't happen. I feel like if she does show up in AEW, I feel like they need to because I feel like there were so many people that were like, "Oh, she's going to show up in Dynamite this week," and
Yeah.
everybody was like almost starting to like take that as fact.
Yep.
And I think that if she does show up in AEW, they really need to make it like a very cool and special surprise.
It's got to be epic.
Exactly. Like it needs to be really like a really top notch
Yeah.
surprise appearance. I wouldn't. I don't want to make a prediction and be wrong, but I'm like, I wonder if there's a possibility that they're saving it for Revolution and they're going to do something cool there.
Okay. I'm going to take that as a prediction, folks. You heard
As
it
like a
here.
total, I just feel like if they do it, it needs to be like a total
Shock.
cool shock surprise at a big
Yeah.
event. Like I feel like doing it on a random episode of Dynamite would
Yeah.
almost just be like, I don't want to say a waste, but I feel like they could do better.
Yeah, I think with the name power and everything else that comes with Sasha, I think that having her walk out and it be a big deal and literally
Right.
take on, be walking out on, Hayter or Britt or somebody at that upper echelon of the division, not, popping up in a tag match or.
Right. I
Yeah.
think as a fan, I would love to see them do something totally cool and unexpected at Revolution
Yeah.
with her.
Well, we'll have to
But
find out.
I don't think she'll be back in WWE like this soon. I feel like
Okay.
she still has too much that she probably wants to accomplish other places. And there's like the wrestling world's so big right now. I feel
Mhm.
like she's got like the whole world at her fingertips where she could do so much. I don't think she's going to go back to WWE this soon, but I wouldn't be surprised if she does eventually.
Yeah, absolutely. And that's got to be one of the coolest things for you, like, kind of getting involved and being on the inside. And you talked a lot about, the work you've done in the interviews, and you mentioned some names like Lexi. You've talked about the Nightmare Factory, but you've literally watched some of these athletes, develop. And, one day they're hanging out with you at an indie show, and next thing
Right.
you're like, I know her, I know him. Like,
Exactly. And
that's gotta be crazy.
that's what I was saying about like this most recent pro wrestling action show that I've done because this particular promotion has had names like they had the Gun Club about a year ago do a tag match for them, and they actually had Billy Gunn,
Yep.
Daddy Ass, out in the audience, and they've had Layla Gray, who's one of the baddies now. They've
Mhm.
had a couple of names that like we've seen to start to kind of go on
Yep.
to larger promotions. And so it's kind of like like a you saw them here first
Yeah.
sort of a thing. And so, and a lot of these people have already gotten opportunities on AEW Dark, and like that, exposure, that TV experience is like a really strong starting point for a lot of people. And so it's totally true. I feel like a lot of these people are like the stars of tomorrow.
Yeah.
And
Absolutely.
you never know. It's when you're going to independent wrestling shows, it's like you never know. This person might just be sort of like getting their start right
Mhm.
now, but in a couple of years from now, they might be a household name that you're seeing on your TV every week, and you just don't know. So
Mhm.
that's why I always, I mean, I think indie wrestling shows are so much fun to begin with, but I always,
Absolutely.
there's kind of like that cool aspect of it too. Like there was a video I had watched on YouTube. It was like a super old indie match between Bryan Danielson and Fergal Devitt, Finn Balor.
Yeah. Yeah.
And they were wrestling in like a bingo hall in front of like 30 people. And I
Yeah.
was like, who would have known,
Yeah.
then that those would be like some of the top wrestlers in the world now. I'm like, can you imagine like being in
Yeah.
that bingo hall with however many people and seeing like these future superstars just go, doing
Yeah.
what they do right in front of your very eyes, and then like years later they're like the biggest names on your TV. I just think that's so cool.
No, it's amazing, and I mean, with what you're doing, you interview somebody, and then a couple weeks later, you see that progression, and like you said, you never know. It could have been a throwaway match on an independent card that nobody paid attention to at the time. Now we're looking back like, "Oh, man, like,
We're
that's
like, this
pretty
is this
crazy."
was yeah, like this was super stardom
Yeah,
that was being born right in front of their very eyes.
that's super cool. Now, with all of that being said, I feel like we could just sit here and talk for hours. We're not even worried about
I know,
the
we got
chat.
me
We're just
talking.
talking wrestling.
Once you get me going, it's hard for me to stop.
It makes for a fun day here on the channel, so
Thank you.
um, that's amazing. But I did tell you we were going to play a little game today, and
Yes.
obviously we've talked about your work with Fightful.com, and kind of the battle between reporting good news and the dirt sheet. So I have a list here of potential headlines, and I'll
Okay.
let you decide if it's worthy news or is it a dirt sheet article headline.
Okay. And are these things that like haven't happened
They
yet?
haven't happened yet. They're more projections for 2023 and
Okay, so
beyond.
like
So
things that
could
either
be
could happen or it's just going to be hearsay.
yes. So it could
Okay.
be a legitimate headline, like let's print it, or it could be a completely like this will never happen, so we're not going to book.
Okay.
Like, you good?
I love that. I'm good.
Perfect. All right, this is gonna be fun. So the first headline I got is, and this one should be a bit of a layup, but Tony Khan Tony Khan has purchased the WWE.
I'm going to say dirt sheets.
Completely. A lot of people itching for this story, but
Dirt
if
sheets.
yeah, it's definitely dirt sheety. Next one, and you've already kind of touched on it, so I might want to go another way. I'm going to change it up.
Okay.
Uh, Sasha Banks returns to wrestling at Revolution and surprises the world. I know she already came back, but North American wrestling.
Headline.
Headline. See, originally in my notes it was Royal Rumble, but listening to your previous answer, I changed it up. How about this headline? Cholance Royale competes on Dynamite.
Headline.
Nice. I like it. I feel like I've been watching that girl forever. Like, and
I know. And she's so talented too. The thing is, she's
yeah,
actually like a technically trained opera singer. So aside
yeah.
from being, I love when people are multi-talented. I always think like the more stuff you have in your back pocket that makes you stand out and makes you valuable in the entertainment
Mhm.
industry, the better. And she's actually an incredibly talented formally trained
Yeah.
opera singer,
Mhm.
along with being um, a, a an up and coming women's wrestler
Yeah.
who's prominent in the community. I mentioned before, she's the current OVW women's champion. We've seen her on
Mhm.
Dark a lot. So I think that is a totally possible headline.
Completely unique, something different that kind of stands out. I mean, I remember I interviewed Gemma Jules, and she had lost to Cholance, and part of the, she
Mhm.
screamed in her ear. The finishing move gets ruined, and it's just different. Next headline for you:
Okay.
Triple H resigns from the WWE. Vince retakes creative control.
I'm gonna say dirt sheets only because I don't see Triple H resigning by choice.
Oh, okay.
I think if
You'll go down tooth and nail.
yeah, like I don't think he would I don't think he would resign. I don't think he would resign by
No?
choice.
Okay. Okay. I like it. Um, Chris Jericho wins yet another AEW title in 2023.
I think that could be a headline.
Ooh, that's a juicy one. You could see Chris getting that strap back. I think it will happen, but maybe
Well,
not
I guess when you say an AEW, do you mean like the AEW?
the AEW title.
Okay, because I was gonna say like one of the secondary titles for sure.
Okay.
Um, the AEW. I think they have to keep that on MJF for like a while.
Okay.
But
Yeah, I think so.
maybe if something happened like late 2023, I think maybe it could be a headline.
That's
I
kind
just
of
don't I
my
don't know
yeah.
story wise that they'd be going there anytime soon.
Yeah.
But like I guess in like 11 months, maybe.
I like it. I like it. And I kind of have that vibe. Like I don't think he's done with kind of
No, I don't
that.
know. Yeah, this one I feel like it could be a headline. I feel like it's
Mhm.
just a matter of like would it
When.
be a headline in 2023?
Fair enough. Fair enough. Another one for you. Trish Stratus makes one last run with the WWE,
I'm
starting at the Rumble.
gonna say dirt sheets.
That's dirt cheaty. Okay. 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 How about this one? Sean Ross Sapp loses to Julie Cutler in a fightful grudge match.
Headline.
Yes.
Oh my god, Sean's gonna love this.
Right?
When I
Take him out. Put you guys in a cage for all the times you guys don't
I
agree on
may be
things.
little, but I am fierce.
I said it earlier. You'd probably kick ass. Um, how about CM Punk returns to AEW looking for revenge on a kayfabe standpoint?
uh, I'm gonna say like
Ooh,
this could be. I wouldn't say that it's definitely dirt sheets. I would say like a really far fetched headline. I could see it being sort of a far fetched headline.
it would definitely shock the world if it comes to be. I
Yeah,
think it would go in either
this
direction.
one's like this one's hard because like there's part of me where I'm like dirt sheets, but then there's part of me where I'm like really I feel like it could be a far fetched headline.
A little bit. I mean, a lot of people have speculated that he might be done with wrestling. He's just over the whole thing, but I don't know if that's true yet.
Well, I feel like everyone has been saying like if there were some amends that people could make where he could come back, it could be like one of the craziest stories in wrestling history. But it's hard. Like I know that he had commented that post that MJF put up about
Mhm.
the PWI awards recently, where like he had taped over CM Punk's name, and CM Punk had responded in a comment. So I was like, I'm when someone does something like that, I'm like, are they real? Are they like really truly like bitter and angry? Are they being like a little trolly?
Mhm.
But then there's also like I wonder about some of the locker room dynamics, like if it could really happen or not. This
Will it
one's
work out?
hard because like
There's so many moving parts, right? Like, I mean, there's
yeah,
been
there's so many
speculation.
moving parts. I want to say generally speaking probably dirt sheets, but there's a part of me that wants like it to be a really far-fetched headline.
I would just like to see him back. I know he's a draw, so yeah.
Yeah, I feel like there were from like a story standpoint, I feel
Mm.
like there were still unfinished stories to be told
Yeah.
involving him in AEW. And so I'd like to at least see the round out of those stories, but like, are all of the right puzzle pieces going to fall into place in terms of like people in the locker
Yeah.
room being on the same page in order to make that happen? That makes me feel like it could be dirt sheety. But then there's the part of me that wants it to be a far-fetched headline.
I'm with you on that one for sure. Quick one from Jason. Jason asks, does MJF sign with WWE in the
I
future?
say dirt sheets.
Dirt sheets. I'm with you on that one for sure. And well, we'll get to this question. I'll give you one last headline after this question. But Hagen was wondering, how important is a journalism degree to get into wrestling?
I would say, I mean, everybody has their own path. I wouldn't say that like I don't have a journalism degree. I know Renee, I'd met Renee Paquette a few times,
Mhm.
and when I spoke to her, she was like, I don't have a journalism
No.
degree. And she's like one of the most successful people in the business, sort of in that type of role right now. So to me, it's like a nice to have. Obviously, I think everybody has their own path in how they get into certain things.
Yes.
For me, I wouldn't say that is like a be all
No.
end all. I think it's just a matter of getting experience somehow, somewhere, and getting your feet wet, networking with people. I and not networking in like a way that's disingenuous, like just
No.
sending out your resume to like Joe Schmo, like really, finding people in the industry that you look up to and
Mm.
connect with, and networking with those people, and um, just trying to get experience, even if it's just like a local um, independent promotion that you can get experience with, or
Mhm.
doing podcasting. Like I said, like the very first podcast that I did was like just kind of on a whim, like fell
Right?
into my lap. A couple of guys that
Mhm.
I was friendly with were just kind of like, hey, do you want to do this? And I was like, okay, why not? So I think that it can come about in so many different ways. Like if you have a journalism degree and you know that that's what you want to do,
Yeah.
or if you're in pursuit of a degree and you know that's what you want to do and you want to focus on journalism, absolutely, like having that formal experience is really helpful. I have a family member actually that has a degree in like television production, and
Yeah.
so there was really good advice that he was able to give me, and also just some really good things about like production that I wouldn't know
Yeah.
offhand, about like how they film things and how they put certain clips together.
Yeah.
So I mean, if you can get that formal background and you know that that's what you want to do, then that's amazing. Because maybe that gives you an advantage that some other people don't have. But I wouldn't say like, say you went to school for something else and then you change your mind later in life and you're like, oh shoot, like I don't have a journalism degree. Like I wouldn't say, oh well, you can't do this now because you don't have a journalism degree. I would say, well, okay, maybe that wasn't your original plan, but like you can start somewhere and
Yep.
definitely find your way in, whatever little opportunities you can get.
Yep.
It's like it could be a snowball effect of just one small opportunity that then you have experience to lead into the
Mhm.
next opportunity. So um if you can get one and you know that's what you want to do, then all the more power to you. But if not, I wouldn't say that you should feel like you missed out, because there's always a way, there's always a path if you want something badly enough.
Absolutely. And I mean, I think you touched on it earlier. It's just putting yourself out there, make the relationships, be brave, be bold.
Yes,
Degree or no degree, funny things happen in this world. And,
exactly,
you know,
exactly.
a couple years ago, the two people currently on the screen probably had no idea that they'd ever be talking, especially about
Right,
wrestling on YouTube. So, hey,
exactly.
last headline.
Okay.
Julie Cutler returns to Wrestling for Life Network to talk more wrestling.
Oh, that's definitely a headline
Yes.
for sure.
Love it. Love it.
I
Love it.
love that. Thank you.
We would love to have you. This was an amazing conversation. I'm excited to continue to watch your journey and see where it heads and where it takes you. And
Thank
we'll
you
be
so
cheering you
much.
along the whole way. So,
And you too. I am, a big supporter of what you guys are doing here on this network. And I really appreciate you having me on. Like I said, I do a lot of podcasting and interviewing that's really centered around like being in kayfabe and, whatever specific show that it is that we're talking about. So it's kind of nice to just be able to like break free from that mold a little bit and just talk about myself and talk about what's going on in the rest of the wrestling world. So I really appreciate it.
As we said, we appreciate you being here. We greatly appreciate it. Anytime that somebody stops by, but to come on and have the energy and look at that. Look, Julie signs with officially. Nick recruiting. I like it.
That's awesome.
But yes, we'll definitely have to have you back on. I always ask everybody I interview, and I just because I like the question, I'm a bit silly. If you were to step in the ring, what would your finishing move be?
Ooh, okay. I feel like I've thought about this a little bit before.
How are you ending a match?
It's hard because like I don't want to give it away. Like, what if I do it at some point and then I'm giving away my secrets?
There you go.
What finisher do I like that I could reasonably see myself doing? I kind of like. I have a couple that are floating around. I was also always thinking like Maurice's, like obviously hers is like the French kiss DDT, but like maybe some sort of a variation of that.
I like it.
I like the Crossroads.
Nice.
I'm a big Canadian Destroyer gal. That's like, I think that's one reason why I love AEW is because I'm just like Canadian Destroyers all over the place. And then maybe as a submission, I could see like the Walls of Jericho or the Lion Tamer.
The Lion Tamer. Lock him in, make him tap.
Yeah, I like that for me, actually.
That's perfect. That's perfect. And I will take a second to say to everybody out there who did tune in, or if you're watching the replay of this, we are here live almost 7 days a week, every week. It's like 345 days a year that we cover live wrestling, live reaction for all your shows, everything from WWE to AEW, all the way down to the independents, GCW, XPW, you name it, we're here live. Plus, we have more original content and our live interviews coming back. So, folks, like, subscribe, join the family. Julie, can you let everyone out there know where they can find you?
Absolutely. So I'm most active on Instagram. I'm pretty active on Instagram. My handle is at the Crown Jewels, but Crown is with an E at the end. It's like the old English spelling. That's just how we roll. I'm very formal. That's how we roll around here. So the Crown Jewels on Instagram. That's probably the best place to find me. I will be returning to Fightful this year, and I'll keep you posted as soon as I have more information to share about that. And some other podcasts that I'm working on having lined up for the near future. So if you want to stay up to date with things that I'm doing, I'll share all of it on my Instagram page as it's all sort of set in stone. So definitely the best place to keep in touch with me, since I said before, I'm not on wrestling Twitter right now. If I do make a comeback at some point, I will let everybody know. But for now, Instagram is my big platform.
That's it, folks. And when Julie does return to Fightful, go check her out there. And once again, I know I told you, I said I was going to say it 10 more times, but thank you so much for joining us. Thank you for being an amazing interview. And yeah, I can't wait to see where it all goes. But with all that being said, once again, thank you, thank you, thank you.
Thank you.
And for everyone else out there, thank you for tuning in. We will see everybody on the flip side back Monday night for live reaction to Raw, your alternative commentary to all the shows, folks. Do not miss out. Thank you, and see you on the flip side. Bye.